Okay, it is Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, 6:07 p.m. This Board of Commissioners meeting, workshop meeting, is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll? City Clerk. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Mayor Hendrick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Price. Here. Commissioner Hodges. Here. Commissioner Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Hudson.
Here. Floor is now open for public comment. If you have any public comments to make for anything that is not on this agenda, please step up to the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, first on the agenda is high dry storage facility. Mr. Laughlin and Mr. Daniels, if y'all would like to take the floor on this, please.
Sure. No big speeches from me. We've got representatives from Cardno here. They're going to make a presentation. So without further ado, I'll have them step up to the podium, give an overview of the report that was provided to you in your agenda packets, and then we'll go through questions that you all have.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Brian Zarlinga. I work with Cardno. We are one of your consultants, and we're hired under a task order back in October of 2020 to look at the marina and evaluate it for a new high and dry facility, as well as your public works compound, and also consideration for a restaurant on top of the ship store. We started this project with Jamie Ahrens, the previous Public Works Director, and have worked with staff throughout the process, not only with your Marina Director, Brian Rao, and Megan and Andrew from the finance side of things. We started this, talking with the planning staff, looking at the previous concept, looking at the survey on the property, to try to analyze, what can fit on this property, what makes the most sense. Getting input from staff, we looked at a marina site that was about 200 boat storage, but also to improve on the public works facility that is that's been outdated over the year. It's just been run down. Buildings have been removed from the property, so just wanted to look at that. One of the concerns, any weekend traffic, holiday coming up, is parking. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at a site plan that would also consider, some level of increased parking on the property. So those were things that we, took into consideration when we were preparing the report that you guys received. Things that have been going on in the industry. There's been inflation pressures with construction costs through this COVID period. Things have been going up, so we had to put our heads together to look at our cost estimate of the site improvements. We worked with a contractor that was down in Fort Myers that built a facility that Brian Rao went to visit, was very interested in that facility with a internal boat crane system versus the normal tugs that you would get on a high and dry. And so he said, this is what we would like. And so we went through a cost estimate analysis for our input data. We looked at your city revenue streams, your city costs from the 2020 fiscal year to pull into our report. We looked at the property in regards to sovereign lands and what's around the property, if we can get the boats out or not. And I know there's been history with our adjacent property owner in the water there, and the city manager had met with him. It was a positive meeting. We've had consistent staff meetings with the team throughout this process. In developing this concept, challenging. I mean, it's certainly challenging. It's not a large piece of property, but we felt that, building a Cat 5 facility, a building that will withstand hurricanes, that will provide, top-of-the-notch facilities for your residents and for the boaters and for the, people visiting this facility was something that we were very interested in putting into the concept plan. I've got with me today representatives from Cardno, from Fisher Architects, who helped us with the concept plan. We can certainly go through that concept and how it evolved from the initial stages through what's on there today, and then get back into kind of the report if you want to talk about the concept at all, or I can go through.
Yeah, you can go through it and
Yep.
answer any questions.
Okay. So in the concept, there's a couple things that I wanted to point out. We have office space when you enter the facility for Public Works. If you're looking at second page of the first concept, so as you enter the compound, number one is your gate entrance, and then you go right through, an array of parking around the perimeter. Number two is your parking. You've got boat storage in there for any transient or public to still access the marina or access the waterways and still park their boats. If you don't go through the gate one, the second gate one, as you're going back towards the bridge, is where you would enter the Public Works compound, and that's where we've got storage for parking. We've got trash enclosures. We've got mechanical space for the fleet vehicles to be worked on, maintenance bays. So Public Works has its offices, first, second floor office space. So that all is taken care of independent of actually the marina, so you're not interacting the Public Works with the marina operations. Number 5 is where we have the ship store. It will stay as a ship store. We looked at a couple things. We evaluated putting a second-story restaurant on top of the ship store. Operating a ship store with, the construction aspect of putting a second story on top of it, it started to get really costly. I think we're in the neighborhood of like $1.2 million just to add that second story with the foundation systems and so forth. So we looked at a couple different ways to make a restaurant still a viable option at the location. The first set of plans doesn't consider the restaurant. It still keeps the ship store there. The second concept would move the ship store into the space of the high and dry in one of the two bays, and then we would renovate or gut out the ship store for a restaurant user, because it really is a good it's a good spot for a restaurant on that first level above FEMA flood levels. But to go 2 stories up, there's a lot of challenges with operation cost, getting to a second story above the ship store, operating a ship store. So we looked at both of them, and so both options are in your package today. This is a crane type operation system. The boats would come in under 6, and there's a crane system that runs through the building, puts your boat in, takes your boat out, puts it in the water. We've got concierge to help with putting that boat to the fueling, getting it ready for the person who's going to be taking the boat out, and then when it comes back, it gets cleaned and put back in its bay. That's, essentially, the site plan as it is. It does give probably an excess of, if you look on the first page kind of gives an overview of the number of spaces for boat bays, and it gives the number of spaces for the parking data. So we are exceeding parking by nearly 17 spaces as required by the current code. We felt that was important, especially on weekends and holiday travel. So from the concept, then we get into kind of like the cost, the operation cost, the planning, maintenance cost, the utility costs throughout the life of the facility. With a facility like this and having concierge service, being a high and dry facility, we talked to staff, we talked to other locations that, with a similar type of high and dry, and we definitely would have to add more staff to run the facility. And those have been built into our report. When you get to the funding sources, we did look at different options through grants, different Florida Recreational Development Assistance Programs, boating infrastructure grant programs, some clean vessel acts. All of those, they are available. The likelihood when you're operating on a revenue stream for, sort of a public-private, facility are challenging to get, those grants for the funding. We certainly would, as this project would proceed, if you guys so choose to say, hey, this is what we want for the city, we would look at every revenue stream option there is out there for grant, getting funding. But in talking with Andrew, one of the things we thought, this would probably be a loan-funded, project, 15-year loan with a 2% interest rate, and then that would be paid back, over that span. That was what was built into the model, assuming no grant funding was available. We just assume, hey, this is what it's going to cost. Let's see what the numbers generate. So the rate structure we used was, like I said, a 15-year, 2% interest rate loan for the duration. We looked at the capital costs, the hard cost, soft costs, any of the design fees that would be needed for the building, throughout the permitting process that we would have to go through, closeouts, and any contingencies. We built contingencies in as about 10% into our project. The general rule of thumb that we use for most of our projects, build in 10%, and we're usually pretty on spot with that. And then, we looked at amortization schedule and what the principal and interest would be over that 15-year span. Looking at the two options, option one would have a break-even year of about 2045, about 20 years. Benefit cost ratio in both scenarios were both above 1, and we always look, if you're above 1, it makes sense. That's where it would say, hey, we're not losing money on this deal. We're going to get our return of our investment, and both options. You can see in the summary page we did an analysis. Internal rate of return was 9.8 and 10% for the two options. There's a lot of other factors, qualitative factors. Doug can certainly talk about some of those that aren't built into the model. What it does for the city to have this facility, what it does for the residents, your tax base. When you've got 200 boats that are now going to be stored in a nice high and dry facility, people are coming, their families are coming, they're using your restaurants, they're using your gas stations, they're going to the convenience store to get their food and whatever to be out on the boat for the day, because you're going to store a boat, you're going to be out there for the majority of the day, based, pending any kind of rain events. But so there are a lot of qualitative benefits that we just didn't build into the model, but you do reap those benefits. And I can go through the actual input data and how it got generated and the actual cost of this facility. If you went to page go to Appendix E, your cash flow analysis section. Starting on the left side of that section of the report, there's your marina revenues. All of the fiscal year 2020 revenues generate about $2.4 million, and that's from marina ships, rentals to dry storage fees to your wet slips to just a variety of revenue streams. When we looked at a 200-boat facility, we look at revenue streams for the new high and dry more on a linear footage basis. You can probably get 30 linear foot boats up to 45 linear foot or 60-foot bays. I think our bays right now in the current concept would house at least 60 on both sides. So you can stack two 30s, you can stack a 45 in a bay, you can stack a large 60-foot boat in there. So we looked at it based on a linear footage basis. The facility down in Fort Myers, when we talked to that contractor, they were generating in the neighborhood of $30 a linear foot. That's down in Fort Myers.
On what size boat? I think it varies depending on the size of it.
It varies. It will vary, yes, sir. Locally around town, there's not really a high and dry that would kind of be the vision of what Brian was looking at for your city, with the automated system, with the concierge service, with the what we're going to put into this location. So it was really challenging to come up with what that linear footage cost would be. Locally, I think the marker ones and some of the other ones in Dunedin and locally are about 18 to 19 currently. Keep in mind, when we did this model, this building would probably be built in 2 or 3 years from now, depending on if you had the funds and you said, hey, let's go now. It'll probably take about a couple years to build it. So we're trying to visualize what 3 years from now is going to be. What's the economy going to be at that point? We came up with a $25 we thought was a mid-range per linear foot of boat, and that's what we plugged into the revenue model. And we think we're close with what we want to put in the building, and that certainly can come down if you don't go to an automated system, if you go to a tug system, if you have less people working at the facility, if you're not providing all the top-notch improvements to the boat barn. So that's how we came up with the revenue stream.
So just,
Go ahead.
So it looks like adding the high and dry at the $25 for linear foot just about doubles the income of the marina. Doesn't look like marina's making
Currently making about
$1,400,000 and
2.4.
something, and we'll make $2,200,000
Yep.
from the, okay.
Yeah, so 2.4
Great.
is what the current marina is generating. 2.2 is what the high and dry would generate, in the future.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm real happy you did the automated system thing. That's great. I think that'll be in big demand.
Yeah, but Fort Myers is $22 a foot up to a 25-foot boat. Over 25 feet, it goes to $30.
Okay.
Depends on the size of the boat you're getting in there.
Right. And Brian was, I think, in Fort Lauderdale last week, and it's not even a comparison. I think the dollars that they have over in Fort Lauderdale are just,
Oh, yeah.
it's just not a comparison to what I think you would get out of this location. So best comparison right now is the Fort Myers, and that contractor did help us with a lot of the pricing inputs for this facility. Middle section is your marina expenses column. So those are all your expenses from the marina. And then the far right column is where a lot of the inputs go into the actual financial model. We went through what the cost would be to build it. It's about $18 million to build the high and dry. We looked at what the outside skin of the building and doing all the office space for the Public Works compound would be another $850,000. The structural foundations for the support systems for the marina, being a Cat 5 type building, would be about another $600,000 added to that. The site construction cost has it's looked at some of the increases that we've been seeing in the marketplace with storm pipe and concrete and other factors. So we have a site cost of about $3 million to improve, do our storm water and get everything kind of in current condition. And then the soft costs built in with some contingency, our total capital cost would be about $26 million to build this facility, which would then be financed over a 15-year period. With interest rate of 2%, that's another $4 million. And then as you went down the columns, you can see all of your operating and maintenance costs, your salaries and wages, your overtime, and all of that is pulled, quite a bit of that's pulled directly from your website and from your fiscal year 2020 numbers. We built into that new increased staff, spoke with staff to get, some of those numbers so that we were comfortable with, what was going to be needed for them. Looked at some of the utility costs for fiscal year 2020 from your utilities, electric, solid waste, telephone, and so forth. Built those in with I think a 3% increase per year. And then that generates your revenues and expenses as you can see it there. Down below, we actually, put the analysis in there for the restaurant, being a lease could generate about $62,500 if you were to build out the restaurant or build out the ship store, gut it, and get a restaurant tenant to come in there to build that out. They can generate some more revenue stream. There would be a little bit of additional cost compared to the original option one, which would just be build out 2 bays. We'd lose 2 bays out of the high and dry, where we would put the ship store into that location. We would also have a sort of a smaller cabana location right near the dock, and then we'd build out the fueling island to get a better location for fueling for the boats with the increased number of boaters we have. So that's the input in the revenue stream analysis. If you go to the last section of the report, which is your discounted cash flow analysis without restaurant, is the first one. You can see where all this summarizes into the report. Starting in the left top column, you've got your capital cost, which we showed was $26 million. We have the interest over the 15-year life cycle of the loan of $4 million. We have the utility expenses over the life of the 20 years build out to get our return on investment there of 5.5, and the operating and maintenance costs over that lifespan as well is $21 million. That comes down to the next column where you see your total project cost of $57 million. That's over, like I said, that's over the 20 years. Now, what we do with that, if you skip the discounted section, you can see that before discounting, there's your revenue streams. You've got $15 million from marina fuel sales. You have another close to $2 million from your ship store. And your high and dry revenue is around almost $59 million, with a residual value of $23 million, netting a total benefit of close to $100 million. That's over the course of the life of the facility over the 20 years. So how do we get that back to present value? These things happen at different times. They happen. You're not going to be day one having a full boat barn. So we have to look at different ways to figuring out when it's day one, day 3, or 3rd year, 4th year. So we bring that back to present value. So that's where you see the 7% discount. So we just bring everything back to present value. That's where we analyze the investment. So you have in the total project cost and you have the total project benefits. You can see when you bring that back to day one, 7% discount, that the total project cost in PV is about $28.5 million. The benefits are $33 million. So you have a 1.16 benefit to cost ratio, earning a rate of return of about 9.8%, and the break-even year would be year 2045. That's taking it from the whole length of the project to back to present value, and that's where we would show an above 1 benefit to cost ratio. And it's a little bit, slightly, I think a little bit higher if you go to option 2 with the restaurant. It's 1.17 with a 10% return. $28.6 million in PV cost and $33.5 million in benefit. So the restaurant will help a little bit in that generator. There's a lot to the report. There's a lot of people who worked on the report. We've worked with staff quite a bit. There's things that could be it's just hard to, make an analysis, for the next 20 years, what's going to happen. But we tried to use the best available information we had and really working with staff, and they've been very, very, very helpful in this process and looking at other locations. The city managers help with talking to the adjacent, property owners. So I think that the report is a good reflection of what this facility could bring to the city, and there's a lot of other factors that would help the city in general when it's all said and done. So, we've got people here that can answer questions. Really want to get your input, and appreciate your time and your thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you. I have a list.
Should I get my notepad out?
Yes.
Okay. First, Mr. Daniels spoke with Dean Pruitt. You know who Dean Pruitt is?
He's the adjacent property owner that's in the little alcove.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're okay with that?
The meeting, from what I understand, was very positive, and certainly nothing was written down in stone, but it was a good discussion. I know there's been past history, but I did not talk to him myself personally, or nobody from our firm talked to him, but he did talk to him, and positive feedback that he would work with us. I don't know what that exactly means, but...
Nor do I.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
I can probably clarify that. Yes, I did speak with Mr. Pruitt, and he wants to cooperate fully with our venture. His only request was that he receive a copy of the study when it's completed. So I was trying to get over there today to drop it off to him, but I will be doing that tomorrow. So he has it, and then give him a chance to digest it, and then speak with him. Obviously, we're going to need some document in writing if we look to go ahead with this type of an investment, which I'll get with, the city attorney to work on drafting some type of an agreement to make sure we have the permission to use the canal so we can enter the facility. So, but he was very open-minded and seemed to be willing to assist us.
Yeah, I would think anything like this would increase the value of his property. So,
Well, we're using the canal now.
the other thing is there's a cell tower on site. Did you look at easements of the cell tower?
Yes. Sorry. We built into our cost analysis and our cost estimate that $3 million that I had mentioned earlier for the site cost. That also includes relocation of their database to the cell tower and recreating new easements to get them straight out. It would be like basically a straight shot north instead of doing a zigzag through the property, we would do a straight shot with the conduits, and so we built that into the cost estimate.
Couldn't have a crane hit that cell tower and get out for us. Now, ship store. Are you aware that that building was built structurally to hold a second floor for a restaurant?
I've seen the plans. I was not 100% sure that the foundation was built. There was like two options that we were provided when we got the initial plan set from Jamie when we started the project. So I wasn't 100% sure, so we looked at it from leave it completely alone to build to a second story with foundation.
That building and foundation were built with the intention of eventually having a second floor and probably a restaurant up there.
Okay.
So the ship store stands as it is, and there are restaurateurs that are already interested in footing the entire bill for a restaurant above the ship store.
Okay.
So that's something we can pretty much scratch off there as far as an investment for the city. You answered my question about the price per foot. I was wondering how you had come up with your figures, and I didn't see that. I know we need to get our Public Works building over here. There was work done previously on a Public Works building that, in fact, and I know Director Webfer questioned about putting the garbage trucks in there, but from what I understood from a previous commissioner, there was a way that could be done to where the garbage trucks could be put in there in a bay and sanitized where we would have no odor over there. And my only other statement on this is that I have a hard time wrapping my hands around debting this city with almost $30 million in debt. So my thoughts to the board are that if we pursue this, we look at a joint public-private venture. But I have no more questions other than those. I think we've pretty much covered as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Now, I do have one more thing, as Columbo said. You're talking about the Fort Myers facility that is slab construction, not sheet metal construction.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've been down to see that one, and it's a heck of a facility. Anyone else?
I got a couple questions too. It appears we've moved all our fueling over to that canal side. So are we taking the fuel pumps out of the front of the marina on the water side? There's a lot of activity going to be going on there with
Correct.
boats going up and down and launching, and then right next to it is all the fueling. It seems to me like the fueling of boats that just pull in and need some fuel should occur. Brian, I see you jumping up. You can come up and help. Seems like they should stay where they are, so that people aren't going down that canal.
Yeah, I'm on board with you. I don't understand why that needs to be moved.
So, in order to have a big enough staging area so we can pull boats out and then they can be ready for customers, we need to move the fuel dock. So the slips right behind the ship store where Dan Casey keeps his boat on that lift and where Dave Zalewski, those slips would be gone, and we would put the fuel dock there. And that way we have the current fuel dock, which we would extend farther down the canal towards the old ramp,
Right.
in order to make a staging area. That's one of the big challenges of all the folks I've talked to about high and dries. You pull it off the lift, you put it in the water, and then you wait for the customer to show up. He's going boating. He's not on time. So you have to have enough room to be able to pull boats out, get them in the water for people so they come. And then you need that room when they come back as well. So we needed that big staging area. Then we'd have to move the fuel pumps over to the, again, where that, a little bit farther, I guess, to the west would be the, building a new floating dock there for the fuel dock for customers. We would have a single pump back by the entrance, where we pull them out, and that's where we would fuel boats if customers ordered fuel. So we'd actually have one additional pump there, and then we'd move the other ones to where the new fuel dock will be. So again, if you ordered fuel.
You're not talking about moving the tanks themselves, though?
No, not the tanks. We would leave the tanks where they are, and we would just have to move, we'd have 3 total pumps for unleaded then.
So
we'll
one would be
lose-
by the staging area, and the
Correct,
other
yeah,
two
one
would
would
be
be-
where people can just pull in leisurely?
Correct, like we
they
have
do
now
now.
for boaters to
Okay.
come in. We have to move that because we got to have that staging area for folks. So if you ordered gas as part of your package, you'd come out, we bring the boat out, and the first thing it does is it gets fueled right there, it gets charged to your account, and then it gets staged there along that staging area by one of the attendants for you.
So we're not totally moving all our fueling over to that staging area?
No. In fact, we're taking it away from the staging area, and that's the key. We need that staging area just for boats. Again, there will be a pump
Fuel
there that...
pumps number 27 on my picture shows right where the boats are gonna come, coming up and down.
And that's fully done by, only the attendants will use that.
Got it.
That is employees only. The public fuel will be
On the other
on
side?
the new floater that kind of goes right out the back of the ship's door.
Okay.
So we'll lose a couple wet slips there.
We're gonna lose 9 actually wet slips.
So was that taken off here?
It was
on
not.
Marina revenue?
No, we talked about this yesterday. We're actually, if you take away the dry storage and this additional wet storage, we're gonna lose about $150,000 in current income. Getting rid of those,
Right.
Yeah.
We can't have those.
correct, yeah, we can't have two
Trailers
things in
hanging
the
So
there,
same
these
spot.
figures aren't accurate then, is what you're saying?
Well, they're accurate, but
Not if we're losing $150,000 a year, they're not.
they're accurate for what they represent. I mean, he just said, here's the income this year, here's additional income from the high and dry. They made an allowance for additional employees and things, but what they missed were losing 8 boat slips.
Well, that's
No way to
what I'm
remake
asking.
those somewhere else? Send some docks or something?
We don't have, we're at the limit of where
Oh, we are.
the channel and everything out there, yeah.
Okay.
You have the 2 docks that run out, and where you're gonna put the fuel pumps in, where the second number 27 is. Are you going to stage boats on the inside of the dock, next to the...
That's correct, yeah, that's the current fuel dock.
And you will have enough room for people to bring in a boat and spin it around and...
Yes, that's why we have to remove, so along the seawall there, right where your pin is, Commissioner, we have docks right there, slips right there. We got 5 slips right along there. We gotta take all 5 of those out, so there's room for people to come in on both sides of the fuel dock, and we can use both sides of the staging area. But yes, there is enough room in between, the 2 docks, the new fuel dock and then the old fuel dock, which will be the staging area.
In the canal, when we're talking about the submerged land rights, that goes all the way up to the seawall on the opposite side?
No,
They're not gonna be able to
the land over,
docks?
he has some land off of the seawall on that side. I don't know the exact number. What the Hampton Inn has off of there?
Yes, 20 feet.
So about 20 feet coming across there. That canal, if memory serves, is about 120 feet wide.
24 and a half.
All these people having boats
125.
and the other boats.
Well, basically,
They
they're
won't.
going to bring them up to the staging dock. After that, it'll be taken care of by the crew at the high dry.
Right, and that was part of the key to building this model, and again, talking to high and dries, getting that floating dock where people can get in easily off and get them off, and then a more experienced crewmate, or we drag it with ropes depending on where it is.
How many boats in a high and dry get used on a holiday or a weekend or something? It says one parking spot for 4 boats. We're going to run out of parking.
That's a really tough thing to suggest. One of the things, the metric they use down at the Gulf Star facility in Fort Myers is how many boats per hour do they take reservations for? And as they have upped their automation and gotten their systems fully operational, they've upped it to, I think the number's about 8 to 10 per hour reservations that they take. You can't just walk through the door and go, give me my boat. You have to do a reservation with them. So if we follow that same model, but then you put 10 boats in the water and you fill up your floating dock, well, what if 3 of them don't show up and you've got to get the next 10 off? That's why you need that decent sized staging area so you can get, and then people decide they go out and they want to come back, all of a sudden they got a call, they got to go to work. Well, now that makes the shuffling the deck chairs a challenging feat for the guys out there.
One of the things with the way I mentioned to you earlier with the internal components of the boat storage, right now we projected it as 200, assuming the mix of 30s, 45, 60-foot boats. You could get 265 boats in there if they were all the smaller boats. You can certainly get less, and that really works to, Brian's advantages, how he wants to manage the facility. The more boats, obviously, the more linear footage you have, the more revenue stream you'll get. But you have to balance that with, like you were asking the question, how many boats can you get an hour on a holiday trip? So you have to do that balance. And I think over the evolution of the project, you'd have your sweet spot, generally speaking. You'd have statistics.
Yeah, I tend to think we're not going to have the bigger boats that I have at Naples or over on the East Coast.
Right. And if you have smaller boats, you could double stack them if you need to, and you'd still have room to shift those boats accordingly, depending on who's using the boat, that weekend, or if you get a reservation, they're coming. So it gives you that flexibility. We're not building it out all the way to the fullest extreme.
Yeah. So. And there is the ability now to, when you take a boat out of a bay, put the car in the bay. I don't know if you've seen that, but
oh, I have not.
They are doing that now.
Okay.
Maybe something to look into. I think parking is going to be really tight.
Yep. Director Repfer, have you got some questions? I know this involves you a great deal with Public Works on one end, and I know this is not what we had envisioned down there, so I'd like to give you the floor to ask questions or to give your input to us and the gentleman from Cardinal.
Good evening. I haven't talked to you guys yet tonight. Personally, for Public Works, it's going to be a little bit challenging. We have a lot of equipment. We have a lot of vehicles. Without actually physically putting my eyes on it and looking at it from a site plan, it's kind of difficult to figure out how we're going to manage the space. So I've spoken with Brian about a few different things. The CDS units that are in the parking lot, they've been updated and added. That's for the stormwater for the property. We've also discussed the cell tower. There is underground wires, which is going to be addressed. But don't really have any other questions, just mainly concerns on how we're going to manage with this.
Does the square footage allowed on this plan Do you know if it's larger, smaller than what you're working with now?
By the looks of it, it's much smaller. We have a lot more outdoor storage currently than what it looks on here, and it may just be skewed. It's really hard to look at it on a piece of paper. If you look at the image, basically from right where the cell tower is located, north of that, that's all our area currently, with a few boats that are stored on the property. But most of that is open for us to be able to stack vehicles or put equipment or cones or whatever may be needed. So I feel like we will be losing some space, but we'll be gaining indoor storage.
The, items 16 on the legend, the storage bays, are those to rent out, or are they for the city?
Public Works.
Okay.
Those would be for storage.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically, all the way from 12 and that area, all the way to the cell tower would be for Public Works use.
Okay.
And I know you had mentioned about the garbage trucks, but with this, there would be absolutely no room to store 4 garbage trucks on the property.
So we're still not getting away from the rental property that we've got now. It doesn't work.
Those trucks take up a very large square footage.
Part of the reasoning in some of this, or the justification, was so that we're not renting property off the island to move Public Works to and from. The marina is where Public Works had always been. That's what the foundations are over there, is an old Public Works building. It was demoed. Plans many years ago to build a new Public Works building, and there actually was talk of a high dry storage facility.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
Sick 'em, Doug.
Oh, boy. God. I came here in such a good mood, and I'm being such a turd in a punch bowl today. All right. I mean, we just got to be, and I love the enthusiasm, because I do believe in the idea. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier, but the numbers to me are astronomical. I mean, you guys got to look back. 10 years ago, we had no debt in this city. Then we took out a $10 million loan to build this facility, and we took out the $15 million loan to do the road projects. So now what we are proposing is we are going to double our debt. We're going to more than double our debt for something that, even by the optimistic estimates here, isn't going to pay off till 2045. And that's not including what we just found out, we're losing $150 a year, $150,000 a year in boat slip rentals. You calculate that over 30-some-odd years, that's $3.8 million, which adds another 18 months minimum to our payout schedule, okay? So, we got to take this into effect. We got to sell this to, it's a great idea, but we got to sell it to the people out, our constituents. I do need to ask a couple of questions, because I caught a couple of things on a few pages. What is Safe Harbor's involvement in this?
Which page are you talking about?
I'm sorry. It's on the cash flow summary. Cash flow analysis, revenue and expenses. If you look at your footnotes, the sources down the bottom, high and dry revenue estimated per analysis done by Safe Harbor Dry Stacks. Doesn't have a page, or I'd give you it.
Page with revenues and expenses.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the contractor, I believe, was the one that built the Fort Myers facility. He assisted us in some of the cost estimating.
Okay, so those guys did build Fort Myers.
Yes.
Okay, so because my next question is, they're the same people that are courting St. Pete, and I just heard the mayor debate the other night, and everybody but the current mayor is completely against privatizing their marina. The numbers on it, if you look at it, are crazy. Not that I'm against a third party or a private partnership or something like that, but these guys, that's not what they do. They come in, they pump in, ironically, $30 million into the project. They run it for 5 years because they can only give them a 5-year lease on it. But your buyout of them, year one is like $38 million, which obviously would even add to our debt. But let's put that to a side for a second. I'm just was hoping that this wasn't a business plan for Safe Harbor, is what we were seeing today. The design looks really similar to the one we had years ago, and I guess that makes sense because the surveys, even in the corners, are from 2008 and 2013. I'm really worried about, although it's cool, robotics, I'm worried about the saltwater damage in robotics. I'm completely stunned that we spent 10 cents without knowing and having an agreement in place for the submerged land leases. I think that I'm glad that this was a positive conversation that was had, but until something's in writing, there's a dollar figure that's going to be attached to that we're not figuring in yet, because I don't see anybody giving up, or even if you're even allowed to, but we'll get that to another time. I think that should have been cleared up prior to us even doing this survey. Let's see. So, a couple more things. I noticed there's no stormwater. When we built this facility out here, I remember it was the big hassle was we needed three. We have 3 stormwater ponds, right? 1, 2, 5. 5 total, right? I don't see any stormwater ponds on here.
Stormwater would be built into the lower level of the barn as well as into the parking area. So we would build an underground type storm.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, yeah, that's a plus. Cool. I was hoping
they're built into our cost estimate as well.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't see them on the plans, and that's what I wanted to make sure. Another thing that concerns me, we're adding 7 to 8 employees. And right now, we don't have anybody that's ever even run a high and dry. They don't have any experience in it at all. And we're about to throw $30 million at a project like that. The power estimate I did see in there, I missed it the first time through. And the other thing was, do we have the definitions of the parcels that were given to the city by the, I believe it's the Internal Trust Fund of Florida, or it's where our floating docks are, I believe. Megan, is that correct? Okay, but yeah, with that area we were given that land, so I don't know if we even have the right to be able to move it, convey it, or sell it, or what we plan to do with that. And I saw nothing in the plan about that. But that's my initial sunshine. So, yeah, I think it's a big number. I think it's a big number, and I think it's going to be really, really tough to sell, because I also think that what we're going to end up doing to ourselves is now we're going to be handcuffed. Now that if we want to do another road project and go borrow some money, where are we going? This isn't going to produce revenue for us for 20-some-odd years. The city center is not producing revenue, and that's a $10 million loan. The road projects that we're doing, $15 million, is not producing revenue. And this, while it's going to produce revenue, is producing revenue to pay off a loan that's not going to extinguish itself for 2046, 2047, based on the loss of revenue. I don't know, guys. It's a tough sell. I like it. Really cool idea, but we're Madeira Beach, not Miami Beach. I don't even know if we're going to get $25 a square foot.
No. Well, I think we could get that as far as putting it in there, but it's just too much debt to put on this city. In my opinion, when I saw these numbers, they're a lot different than other numbers I was getting. And I talked to, in fact, city manager and I spoke with F3 just a couple of days ago, and their numbers are not like this. So if we're talking about numbers like this, I think, in my opinion, we need to put it out on a RFP for a joint public-private venture and see what we get back for both the high dry and for the marina, because I think we can get this done for, you know, and have the companies foot the bill on a lot of this. Maybe not all, but I think we need to get those RFPs out there and see what we get back in. But I can't support the city footing the bill on this. Too much debt.
It's just the exact wrong time to be building just about anything.
Costs are through the roof right now. Concrete will probably be coming back down as things slow back down, but right now it's a tough time to be building.
While we have you here, when you show 4 stories, is that putting boats on the ground floor, or is that the first story, 1 floor up?
I think it'd be all 4. It'd be all, yeah.
On grade, okay. And then how tall is a story for a boat storage? Is it the 10 feet that
Yeah, at least that, because you've got,
We're thinking about 100-foot tall. I think 102 or something is in our packet, tall building.
We're gonna need a variance for that too, right? I mean,
I think that's what I saw was 65 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because you've got the equipment on top of those, radars and belts, towers and all sorts of stuff up there. So,
I was also, excuse me, real quick, Mr. Mayor, I was also kind of surprised that it was with restaurant or without restaurant. I thought it would have been with robotics or without robotics. I'd really like to know what that number looks like. I mean,
I don't think it's worth building it without robotics.
well, I mean, it depends on what the number
We can't
is.
put something state-of-the-art in there.
I think my biggest issue with the robotics is when it breaks, and it will break, salt water does deteriorate these things pretty quickly, who do you call? I mean, if there's none of...
People that installed it.
Huh?
You get a contract with it, just like we do every other.
that's...
Yeah, but how many are the contractors around here? Are they in Fort Myers? I mean, it's not a common thing in the area. I don't know there's a lot of robotic high and dries around here, but I could be wrong. I'm just saying that scares me a lot, that part, yep.
Basically, they're glorified boat lifts. That's all they are. They've got, the one I saw down there, I think, had 4 motors on it. And it was just a heavy-duty boat lift, really. And basically the same thing inside. So it's not, it's not highly technical as far as maintenance or operating. But nevertheless, that figure,
Yeah.
sure, me heartburn when I saw it.
Yeah.
Understood.
if you go with another outside company, does that prove our liabilities for this, somebody else?
Well, the bottom line is I think we need to put it out for an RFP and see what comes back. I know several companies do this to where the municipality furnishes the land and they build the project and run the project, and then you split revenue. How that revenue is split, I don't know. That's something we've got to figure out. But same way on the restaurant, I've spoken to 2 restaurateurs that are willing to foot the bill on the restaurant and go above the ship store and then rent from us. So when you bring those things into a marina, you're bringing transient boats in, you're selling more fuel, you're selling more from the ship store. It brings quite a number of things to the city and to the marina to generate even more revenue.
Nervous about all the parking for a restaurant along with all the parking, everything way to put cars in the boat slot.
I
Well,
think it's out of our price range right now.
Yeah. So, I don't have any more questions.
I sure like the way option 2 looked. Do something, I think the restaurant has to be part of it.
Well, it should be a. I can't see.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
can't see another 5 million or so.
No, I can't either.
So, how does everyone feel about going ahead and putting it out on a?
I'd be open to that.
Yeah.
Professional marina management company or whatever, or marina
Well,
building company.
there are companies
also
around that are full service. They not only build them, they manage them. The company F3 that I spoke with, they run marinas all over the United and some other countries. So there are a number of them, a number of good ones that know what they're doing. And if they build it, I would like to see us be able to not burden the city with the financial end of it. I would rather be able to just collect the check.
As long as we don't lose too much control over our property. Be happy to put that out for RFP. I don't know what you would call it. I'm not that well versed in this, but.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great ideas in here, I must say.
So
I enjoyed reading it.
yeah. So, Mr. Daniels, can I get with you over the next week or so and look into RFP on this and maybe get it on the agenda for the next commission meeting?
Most certainly.
Possible also to get photos of drawing of what it looks like, residents water from this and interested in what this looks like.
Well, there's what I did.
Well, we don't know yet because
we
it's a
don't know.
feasibility study,
Yeah.
but yeah.
That's where on down the road from that, there will be concept drawings, of course.
Okay.
That would, that's after the RFP on getting proposals to do this.
Include it in the RFP.
And the outside is no big deal to make it look much any way you want it to look. So we do that on the restaurant and the high dry storage.
Public comment?
Yes, public comment?
Jeff Brooks, 425 150th Avenue. So I'm definitely right next door to this, and I hear you guys on this thing, and I'm fine with putting the high and dry there. I'm not here to argue about it. But when you look at that proposal and you started talking about parking, 40 spots for 200 boats. I'm sorry, guys, we're way off base. And then if you add the restaurant, which I live next door again, I'm all about having another place to go eat at. I'm all for 20 spots. And if you pay really close attention to what's up there. If it doesn't have a restaurant, it has 20 extra spots for whatever. But if you talk about putting a restaurant in there, all of a sudden, those 20 spots that were just floating for whoever disappeared, and those 20 spots are now 100% for the restaurant. And I don't care what you say, 20 spots for a restaurant isn't getting it done. There's no way. We got to really rethink that. If we're going to go down this road, I mean, I really hope that we get a lot more support on, we're either going to have to do the high and dry or the restaurant. I just do not, it's hard to imagine looking at this thing and looking at these drawings, how that's ever going to work. And then lastly is this, and this has happened way too many times, is if you're going to consider doing that restaurant, we need hours, and they need to be stipulated into how this is going to work from our side. Because if you're talking about a restaurant that's going to be open at nighttime, I'm fine with that again. But at 10 o'clock, there needs to be some sort of end to live music, some sort of end to outdoors music of any type or live music inside. It's got to end. And I just hope we'll be considering some of those things going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone have anything else?
I have something just unrelated. There is some activity with storms that's coming across the Atlantic, and right now, again, you know, these things change, as we all know, but it looks like it could be heading towards Florida eventually, sometime towards the end of next week. How the strong it's going to be, you know, they expect it to be at least of a tropical storm type nature. So I'll keep you all abreast as that comes about.
Okay, maybe we can get an email out so that people can go ahead and start filling sandbags and, you know, be set up ahead of time. Then they'll have them for the season.
Yep. Don't forget about the 4th of July.
Are y'all high enough you don't need them? Oh, okay, good, good. Oh, okay. Good Lord, I didn't know it was that late. Okay, if no one has anything else, this meeting is adjourned at 7:14.